Hello, thank you for joining me in a new video. Today I have a comprehensive review of the OPPO Reno 13G to share with you. Let's get started. This device falls into OPPO's upper middle range. Remember, their flagship top-tier model is the Find X Pro. In China, there's also the Find X Ultra. Now, this particular device has been launched in Mexico, priced at 14,999 pesos, which is approximately $745, for the sole edition available. 12GB RAM, 512GB storage. From the start, we can say that one of its strongest features will be storage, and interestingly, when it comes to price, it competes directly with the iPhone 16. But in the Android world, I must say, there will definitely be additional devices available that are capable of competing directly with this particular device. And they will do so at a more competitive price point than what is currently offered. That's within this particular price ranging. With Android, you don't typically find as many phones. They can be pricier or cheaper, but this isn't a common price range, typical for the Android market. Another strength of this, cellular distribution is quite extensive, widely available, not just with Telcel or phone companies, but also in online stores like Mercado Libre or others, Amazon, or in stores like Electra or Coppel. The fact that it has such a wide distribution means that at times we might come across some promotions or discounts that are more appealing. In fact, I would highly recommend looking for it when it's on promotion, because there are certain specific aspects where it might not meet expectations and could be disappointing. The price range and other factors where it holds up very well. Like any mid-range device, it will have very good points. Points where it disappoints. Let's get to know it point by point. In design, it does not disappoint at all. The front has quite reduced bezels, so it looks like a modern design. In fact, the rounded corners are also very nice. In many ways, the design will remind you of an iPhone. Honestly, even the experience of holding it in my hand personally has moved me to holding it in my hand. An iPhone. The front is protected with Gorilla Glass 7i, which resists scratches well, not so much falls. It offers a resistance level we expect, though some lower-end devices use Gorilla Glass Victus, which is tougher. Overall, it's acceptable. The frames are crafted from aerospace-grade aluminum, effectively bringing a high-end device experience to this premium mid-range or high-entry range, a somewhat complex price segment with fewer competitors. On the right side, there are volume and power buttons along with plastic bands to enhance connectivity. At the very top, we will find the microphones, along with the audio output and infrared. These are once again accompanied by small plastic bands. On the left side, we notice a completely clean frame. This device's thickness is 7.24 mm, so it is very, very light. At the bottom, we find the tray for the SIM card. If you buy it with any phone company, it will probably come blocked the second slot. But if you buy it in a free form, you have two slots, and also down here there is another microphone USB-C port, finally the speaker with two perforations, giving it a rather original touch because there are not so many devices with this design. This particular cell phone is also incredibly light, weighing only 181 grams. I must emphasize that it provides an excellent feeling when held in the hand. The back of the phone is crafted from glass, which certainly contributes to its premium feel. In this instance, the glass resembles a frosted glass, offering a satin finish that is slightly textured. When you touch it, it feels exceptionally premium. The manufacturer states that they have incorporated various advanced technologies into the phone. Among these, they mention some as bionic damping, along with other absorption technologies. The device is designed to be shock resistant, which helps to prevent major damage when it is accidentally dropped. However, as with any electronic device, it still requires careful handling. Regarding water resistance, the device can reach up to IP levels, including IP and IP, so you don't need to worry about water exposure. You can submerge it without facing significant issues. Notably, this is one of the few devices that offers an underwater photography mode, encouraging you to use the camera even in such conditions, as suggested by the manufacturer. Underwater, something that other manufacturers do not recommend too much with this active mode. Just use the physical buttons to control it, because obviously the screen stops responding if you can reach underwater. To truly enjoy a much more advanced experience, you can fully take advantage of the device's remarkable underwater resistance capabilities. Even when you switch out of this underwater photography mode, the speaker will emit a loud and clear sound in the purest style possible. From the water drawing watches that may have been stored there, I own the white color edition, which provides a butterfly effect that is also quite nice on this back cover. In a sense, I could say it gives a somewhat feminine effect. It's also available in a luminous blue color, which is much more sober, but will make some lighting reflections stand out a bit more, adding an interesting touch. Although I don't have that one in my hands, I can say that the design is overall one of its strong points. It's strong primarily because it's lightweight and comfortable to hold. It offers a premium feel due to its straight lines and slim profile. Additionally, it has a high level of water resistance. To give you an idea, it's more resistant than many devices that are more expensive. Double the cost. The screen has a diagonal of 6 and 59 inches, so it is at a medium level. We could say that it is not a large or huge device, but it does not fall into the compact category either. So you have a good balance between a compact and spacious device. The screen offers us full HD plus resolution, to be exact 1256x 2760 pixels. That give us a density of 460 pixels per inch. That is, all content will look very sharp. The screen truly performs well in that regard. In fact, through the use of software, the device slightly restricts the resolution to specifically achieve full HD. Technically speaking, the precise resolution is a bit greater than full HD. Honestly, I don't believe there is a significant difference, but just so you know through. In the configuration, you have the option to select the setting that suits you best. Moreover, we are dealing with an AMOLED panel, which provides us with excellent color quality. Within the settings, you'll discover various screen color modes, allowing you to select your preferred calibration. Personally, I find the natural setting to be the most appealing, and it is the default option. However, there is also a Pro setting and a Vivid setting available. Although it doesn't offer as many manual adjustments as some other devices, any of these three calibrations will serve you well. You can still adjust it using the display color temperature selector. In fact, on that note, it also features an adaptive tone switch. This will attempt to match the white color of the surrounding environment, much like the True Tone feature found in iPhones. Consequently, the viewing experience on this display is really quite impressive. It even boasts a high brightness level that can reach up to 1200 nits, making outdoor content viewing quite pleasant. Additionally, the minimum brightness level is also well managed. In other smartphones, we could actually find a potential point of improvement because it doesn't go as low. So if you're trying to use the device at night, it won't be an extremely comfortable experience. Obviously, the dark mode helps, as well as the eye care mode and other features, but this particular device doesn't integrate an extra dimming mode. This mode is available on some other devices, allowing the screen brightness to be reduced to a significantly lower level. So, if there is anything I could request or demand from this device, it would be an improvement in low brightness performance. The rest of the features are almost perfect, as it complements well with a 120 Hz refresh rate, allowing for very smooth movements while using the cell phone. This refresh rate can also be adjusted to reduce it down to 60 Hz to conserve battery life. But it also has an automatic adjustment feature through the software. It also includes an image sharpness enhancer. While it will consume more battery, if you prefer to view sharper images, you have the option to activate it, even though the original images might not possess high resolution. Additionally, there is another feature that can convert SDR content to HDR, allowing you to experience it with a significantly enhanced dynamic range, providing a more realistic sensation. In fact, another advantage of this display is its support for HDR content. The camera features Pro technology, XDR for the images you view. Through this screen, there's a sense of increased brightness in certain areas, enhancing the shadows. You'll also notice it supports HDR from Instagram, YouTube, Netflix, and other apps, so the screen is excellent. As for the sound, there are two speakers, which is expected in this range. Here it must be noted. The secondary speaker in the upper area with the headset for calls, a small frame output, lacks desired power. It's simpler, so the sound isn't balanced and lacks strong bass presence. Thus, I think the sound it's not quite enough. In this price range, it offers a 10-band equalizer, which could improve speaker sound, but it's only for headphones, so you can't use it to enhance the experience. The volume is loud with an ultra volume mode activated by pressing the volume up button, providing extra gain, especially in frequencies. Mid and treble, the audio quality remains poor in that regard. However, if it is going to improve the volume, if that's your priority, the volume here is quite loud if you happen to locate it. How about we try listening to a brief test? However, keep in mind that it's not quite the same experience as hearing it live. This phone doesn't include Dolby Atmos, however, it incorporates a technology known as Reality Audio, which was developed by OPPO. You'll benefit when you use it. Headphones, so in that sense, yes, you will indeed have some surround sound presets or similar features, but to be honest, they don't really make a significant difference. Additionally, it also includes spatial sound functions, which work in conjunction with compatible headphones from the manufacturer for an enhanced experience. When you turn the head, the sound, they will be perceived in different ways and more. Another similar thing will be hollow audio, which is basically the same as spatial sound. And in this case, it should be noted as a positive point, an option that brings to control the volume independently for each application. So if you have several applications playing something at the same time, if you could select that one of them has a lower volume and another higher, useful, for example, to play while listening to music or similar applications, only that this option is turned off by default and you have to turn it on in the settings. The device does not bring headphone jack, which is expected in the price range, but fortunately has codecs like LHDC, aptX and LDAC to enjoy good audio resolution with compatible headphones. If you want to enjoy zero latency, you will have to use USB-C headphones or an adapter. For microphones, we will find 3 in total, those in the frames, a bit hidden inside the camera area. This microphone becomes fully focused on noise cancellation during video recording. On that note, it also has a feature called Clear Voice, which is off by default but useful for video calls or phone calls. You can decide when to activate this mode, but let's listen to a normal recording.
Esta es una prueba de audio grabada con los micrófonos integrados de este OPPO Reno 13.
Obviously, voices in a quiet environment are going to be picked up well. Let's make a call to test this Clear Voice feature. First, I want you to listen to the ambient noise I'm going to have.
Evidentemente es un ruido intenso.
Bueno, hola, estoy llamando sin el modo voz clara activada. ¿Me puedes escuchar más o menos? Sale, vamos a probar ahora con el modo voz clara activada. Hola, tengo el modo voz clara activada ahora para ver si me escuchas bien o hay alguna diferencia. Ah, qué curioso. Bueno, ahorita comentamos eso. Saludos.
And look at what a curious result of our test. With the clear voice mode on, you hear more external noise, and with the mode off, you hear more voice isolation. But well, be that as it may, there is this mode that you can turn on or off as you like, fortunately. Now let's test how it behaves in much noisier environments, simulating a concert. As you could notice, the device does a great job at adjusting the gain of its microphones. We didn't even notice any distortion at all, and you don't even notice a loss in the clarity of the audio. It behaves excellently here. And finally, in this block, the device is equipped with a vibration motor on the X-axis, which even has intensity adjustment. The experience feels very premium, which is exactly what we would expect in this price range anyway, but when you feel this positive feedback in your hand by an example is when you are typing on the keyboard, or when you are adjusting other sliders like brightness and more. OPPO is one of the manufacturers that excels at optimizing their operating system to provide you with this premium tactile feedback when you are using it. The front camera has 50 megapixels, and it is positioned in a circular cutout centered at the top of the screen. It features an f2 aperture and includes autofocus capabilities. We are talking about a front camera far superior to the vast majority of devices on the market. There are even more expensive devices with simpler front cameras, so this undoubtedly can become one of its strongest points. Although in a moment we will see its results. Something that I do not really like is that the device does not have a quick release method when you have the device unlocked, so if you were suddenly doing something and want to take a picture, you necessarily need to go to the home screen and open the camera icon. Some other devices like Motorola have gestures or shortcuts such as a double tap or something similar. However, in this case it will only function when your screen is locked, and it involves a gesture with pressing the volume down button twice. This feature is also disabled by default. Additionally, you could have another gesture like drawing a pattern with the screen off, but this too is disabled by default. Notice that in this particular case, the camera provides us with a response speed that isn't extremely fast. Although it doesn't freeze or anything like that, I would say that for very rapid continuous captures it may not be considered an expert. However, it does perform adequately. If we hold down the shutter button, observe that it doesn't offer a burst mode for the front camera. Fortunately though, it allows us to take a wide capture or even a close capture, which is quite beneficial. There are not many devices available on the market that actually have a zoom control specifically for the front camera. Additionally, please note that on the right side, there are some effects available if we want to capture a type of photo with unusual lighting. Personally, I would not prefer this, as it appears that the lens becomes muddy when you enable one of these options. Therefore, I would not recommend them very much. Furthermore, it also includes another button for color filters, which we can preview in real time. And finally, there is a beauty mode where we offer two main settings: natural or classic. Alternatively, you can go through and adjust each parameter individually, controlling every aspect of it. Notice that there are endless options available to modify your face, and if you set all the parameters to the maximum, you'll end up looking like an alien baby, but that's how it is. By the way, it also includes a very useful exposure control setting, which is especially helpful when you're taking pictures in a dark environment that you actually want to keep dark, because sometimes cell phones might. To increase the lighting, this is a fixed control, and all your other photos will stay within this light range. Additionally, it features live photos, which means they can capture a small portion of the movement in your photo. Simply press and hold, just like you would on an iPhone, to view the video. At the top, you'll notice there's also a small button to play it. In fact, if you look within the options, you'll find that you can save this live photo not only as a video, but also as a GIF. So, if you're interested in extracting these videos from your photos, you can definitely do that here as well. Obviously, when live photo is enabled, it will result in a slightly slower picture. Also note that you have access to the timer in the additional menu. Plus, there's a palm capture gesture available, but it's turned off by default. So you'll need to go into the settings to enable it if you want to use it. These types of additional tools are quite useful. One of them includes the ability to tap anywhere on the screen to take a picture when reaching the shutter button is difficult. Of course, you can also use the volume buttons without any issue. Now, let's check the results with the front camera. They actually turn out quite well, and it definitely does not disappoint in any way. It provides us with a very good level of detail thanks to the autofocus feature, and also offers a good range with this lens. 21mm is ideal for achieving well-framed shots in scenarios where you want the background to be captured nicely. With its focus capabilities, this camera allows you to capture closer objects with a high level of detail. Interestingly, it also supports digital zoom at DOS X, providing very good image quality. This means you can show incredibly specific details of your face or similar subjects. Overall, it offers excellent photographic capabilities. In scenarios where there is backlighting, the preview is exceptionally well optimized, which is quite rare for Android devices. This aspect stands out as one of its strongest features regarding user experience. Thanks to this simple setting, you will notice that the camera quality is excellent and the results are clearly very positive. In these light and shadow scenarios, the light areas are not overexposed, maintaining a good color balance, while the shadow areas are also overexposed with the appropriate lighting conditions. But if you are similar to me and prefer colors that are a bit more saturated, you can, with a bit of editing, achieve this perception of difference. When indoors, the detail level naturally diminishes because there is somewhat less lighting available, yet overall it captures a good image. At night, especially when positioned in front of a light source, the outcome will be exceptionally good. If you find yourself backlit at night, which is quite a complex environment that typically only high-end devices handle well, you will see that the outcome is quite satisfactory. You can tell it's not a fully high-end device just yet, but the result is still impressive. In this scenario, you may notice that the screen was brightened to illuminate the face a bit better, but even without that additional light, the outcome remains very similar. Notice that the night portrait photography with the front camera is very good. Believe me, I've tried even more expensive devices, and in this mode they get very bad results. OPPO fares very well with this device, being one of its strongest points. For example, as a reference, consider the iPhone 16, which has exactly the same price. Check out my review, that you notice the difference of this same test with this device. Although on the day I realized that portrait photography does not get to be as advanced as I would like, because while it generates an effect, bokeh, very nice in the background and detects the edges of the body, it can accurately detect objects. They're in the foreground, even if your hand is near them. You're not an expert on front portrait photography, but at night, I loved it. On the back, there's a 15mm ultra-wide camera with a 2.2 aperture, autofocus, and an 8 megapixel sensor. Next is the 26mm main camera with f1.8 aperture, autofocus, a 50 megapixel sensor and optical stabilization. Lastly, there's a depth sensor for portraits with 2 megapixels and f2.4 aperture. The 26mm main camera also offers us cropping inside the sensor, so we can get 35 or even 50mm photos in approximate equivalent focal length while still maintaining good image quality. So it does something similar to what the iPhone does. Cropping inside the sensor to still give you more or less optical quality. Definitely, if you compare it to the iPhone, it's going to be superior in terms of the camera set, but if you compare it to devices, Android is going to fall short because at this price level we can already expect a telephoto camera. Plenty of Android phones, even those with much lower prices, already provide us with a dedicated zoom camera. However, this device really falls short in this aspect. Moreover, you will soon see how, despite having what is claimed to be a depth camera, it doesn't significantly enhance portrait photos. It's a bit short. In certain situations involving photography, it's interesting to note that this camera performs quite well in video. The device provides us with a notably agile capture capability in continuous shooting modes. If you hold down the button, you can also initiate a burst mode, though it is limited to a maximum of 20 photos. During our testing, we observed that the device is very responsive to touches and reacts quickly, allowing you to capture the precise moment you desire. However, it's worth mentioning that the burst mode takes a bit longer to process. Initially, I think its response is quite positive. There is minimal space between each photo, so if you manage to capture the exact moment, it could be beneficial. However, the limit of 20 photos means you essentially have just 1 second of photos stored. It is noteworthy that, similar to other high-end OPPO devices, it provides settings for more intelligent photography. This is particularly useful in situations where most cell phones might struggle, like in the current moment. If we go back to the traditional photography mode, it's important to note that there's another way to capture a scene, a silhouette, or even fireworks. Most cell phones tend to increase the exposure excessively in dark scenes, but with these intelligent settings, you could achieve a higher quality photograph in these types of scenes. If you tap the screen, you can adjust the exposure and focus, and you can also permanently lock it. Alternatively, you can access the Pro mode where we have even more controls available. The ISO can be increased up to 3200, and the shutter speed has the capability to go up to 30 seconds. There's compensation, focus and white balance, but this time it doesn't have raw photography, which is a downside if you like adjusting parameters post-shot, as most phones in this price range offer it. However, in Pro mode, we do have the histogram for real-time picture info. Returning to traditional photography mode, note that another. Once you have these effects for muddy lighting, I personally don't recommend using it, but it's available. We also have color filters and beauty mode, though here it's only one parameter, unlike the front camera that let us modify the face. Regarding smart experiences, it doesn't auto-detect document scanning, but you can access document scanner mode to create these types of pictures or even to translate any text you desire on the screen. Keep in mind that you first need to take the picture, then it will recognize and crop it. However, what's really interesting here is that it also lets you add multiple pages, which is a positive feature. Unlike other cell phones that only crop a single image and stop there, this device allows you to continue adding more and more pages, placing them at the bottom. You have the option to remove any photos that you didn't quite like or to add some pictures that are already in your gallery. Once you click next, you have the opportunity to review these sheets again, and you can even apply a grayscale effect to give it the appearance of a photocopy. Actually, you can also rotate the pages or apply these kinds of effects to the remaining sheets. In addition to having a comparative view, perhaps we could request an optimized color mode because currently you can only select either the original or the optimized black and white version. But in general terms, we could tell you that it is a good scanner, since you can save it as a PDF or as an image. And for scanning QR codes, note that you can do it from the main camera interface without having to open any additional options, giving a very good experience. The result with the ultra-wide camera looks very good to me, especially considering that other devices in the ultra-wide camera usually give us less accurate colors, but this device has good detail and good color. Interestingly, the main camera gives us paler colors in some environments. In this case, for example, I didn't like the color very much, but the level of detail of the main camera also looks very good. Even outdoors, OPPO provides us with the 35 or 51mm setting, maintaining optical quality, so the short-range zoom is excellent. Notice again how the ultra-wide camera offers more accurate colors than the main camera. However, at the maximum zoom setting, we find a maximum 20 times zoom, which is digital and appears overly forced. I believe that the 10x zoom is the maximum level where we can still achieve acceptable quality, though the image doesn't appear particularly impressive. In this price range, or even at a lower one, other brands might offer optical zoom, which means this device doesn't particularly excel in the zoom department. When you zoom up to 5x, the quality remains good, but beyond 10x, it truly diminishes, making the zoom feature undoubtedly one of the device's weakest aspects. In scenarios with backlighting, the preview is excellently optimized. This is an aspect I truly appreciated about this cell phone. It's one of its strong points. With the ultra-water camera, the outcome also appears balanced, though there's slightly more chromatic aberration noticeable on the border between highlights and shadows. Therefore, it doesn't seem to exhibit such a spectacular performance given its price range. In fact, the shadow area could also look slightly overexposed, so it doesn't look like such an attractive result. The main camera improves this picture a bit, having a little better contrast and obviously less chromatic aberration. So it is recommended to use this camera in this kind of conditions. Indoors, again, the ultra-wide camera gives me a bit more accurate colors, with this warm tone that was there in real life. It is important to note that the main camera tends to produce slightly paler colors, however. I must emphasize that the level of detail remains good even in these indoor environments. Although the 51nm 2x zoom crop doesn't provide as much detail as observed outdoors at night, I appreciate how well it balances the backlit areas. Notice that the brighter areas don't appear completely burned out and the darker areas are captured nicely, with noise being sufficiently well controlled from the ultra-wide camera is something to look forward to. The primary camera is set to enhance every aspect, offering even cleaner and more detailed images than before. When using the 2x zoom crop, the lighting is handled well, maintaining good quality, though it might not capture as much detail as the 26mm setting does. In situations where there is no light in the frame, the ultra-wide camera still performs admirably and resolves the scene effectively. This camera, in my opinion, has really good quality when compared to others we've seen. The main camera is even better. You'll notice that it manages the darker areas quite well, maintaining excellent detail, and it also doesn't produce too many artifacts in this part of the sky, so the overall result is very impressive. If you attempt to zoom in, you might notice that it tends to overexpose slightly more, although if you turn off the night mode, the outcome will appear more natural. In scenarios with a lot of motion and abundant light, both cameras perform quite well, even when using the zoom setting. However, in shadowy areas, if you apply a bit of zoom, it will create this sweeping effect. For macro photography, the device provides autofocus on the ultra-wide camera. It features an automatic macro mode, meaning you cannot manually activate it. The results will look impressive with a good level of detail. However, when getting close to objects, you might also end up blocking more light of what you want. This is as close as the main camera can focus, but if you use the 51mm crop, you get pretty much the same distance as with the ultra-wide camera's macro mode, but that I find the level of detail is superior, mostly because you let in more light without obstructing it. This is another example. In this case, this is the zoomed-in photograph, and see the level of detail we have, it's quite good. And now we have the macro mode available with the ultra-wide camera, which isn't bad at all. They provide very similar results when using both the ultra-wide camera and applying 2x zoom with the main camera. However, only in scenarios like this one, where there are small objects with a significant distance difference in the background, will you notice that they don't let you use the macro mode of the ultra-wide camera. The device becomes quite confused in these types of scenarios, and since you cannot activate the macro mode manually, you will necessarily. You should use 2x zoom if you want macro shots here, but if instead of close you want to be far away, this is the ultra-wide camera reference. And here you have the panoramic mode, which honestly is bad, as it offers us a very low level of detail. Even in some areas you can tell it had complications to merge one and the other photograph. It is definitely a panoramic mode that should improve a lot. In that sense, I would prefer to use the ultra-wide camera. We will additionally discover a high-resolution mode, which will enable us to utilize more pixels within the image. Although it doesn't fully exploit 100% like some other devices, it will still permit us to apply some extra cropping while keeping a good level of detail in the image. Lastly, portrait photography. It appears that it's not going to be quite as spectacular as one might hope. Fortunately, it allows us to have a telephoto view of 51mm, which indeed looks somewhat more professional due to being a telephoto perspective. However, interestingly, it does not maintain 100% focus on foreground objects. At times, it seems to encounter some complications. Therefore, it's not a photograph with high precision. Nevertheless, sometimes it manages to handle these complications in a more favorable way. Yet there are still areas where it lacks accuracy, such as, for instance, the area around the cable in this particular case, although it was a rather complex photograph. So we are not yet in front of a portrait photography at the level of a high-end device, but I like that it does apply a telephoto. Perspective even notes that in the evenings I was able to take good portrait pictures simply to objects. It is not even necessary to have to one person, and the result looks good. A natural effect with an impressive level of detail. Therefore, the portraits are of really good quality. However, it's clear that it is not quite a flagship device yet. Regarding video recording, this device enables us to capture in 4K at 60 frames per second with both the front and main cameras, which is excellent news. However, the ultra-wide camera has more restricted capabilities, allowing only full HD recording at 30 frames per second. Take note of how practical the resolution selector is, and obviously the cameras that are not compatible will be deactivated. For example, the ultra-wide camera does not appear here, but if you go back, there will be a mode available that records at 30 frames per second. I understand that a lot of iPhone users often choose to record this way, especially when creating stories or similar content. Fortunately, in this instance, the front camera does indeed support recording at 60 frames per second, and it can even do so in 4K. It also offers a good level of amplitude. In a moment, we will take a look at the results, and you can let me know if you find them convincing or not. The truth of the matter is that here in video recording, it also gives you some specific color filters, but they are not 4K compatible, just like the beauty mode with a single slider. So, if you want to take advantage of these additional options, you have to sacrifice level of detail when recording video. Note that we will also have these buttons to slide between the different lenses as long as you are recording in full HD. Additionally, there is a button to take pictures and another button for pausing and resuming your recording. However, there isn't a button for switching to the front camera before starting the video. What you'll have available is the option to toggle the flashlight on or off without interrupting your recording. There's also another button to activate noise cancellation if you're in a windy setting. Naturally, we can tap to adjust and lock the exposure or focus. Moreover, we also have on top of that, the manual exposure adjustment could help a lot in dark environments. In this case, the Pro mode doesn't support video, and neither does it have a movie mode or anything like that as we see on other OPPO cell phones. However, the fact that it offers us these kind of on-screen settings possibly helps a bit more. Let's take a look at the results. Just as we saw in the photograph, the ultra-wide camera seems to give us slightly warmer colors, although it can only record in full HD. But by the way, recording in this resolution, if you could make the dynamic shift to the main camera, having a good zoom range while recording video. However, if you want to record in 4K, you can only do it with the main camera, something that for the price range definitely disappoints. However, I find that the quality of the detail level offered by the main camera for video recording is quite good. When it comes to indoor scenes, it manages to control noise effectively, although there might be some instances where it struggles a bit with the white balance, making the image appear either excessively warm or somewhat cooler. This can result in a lack of stability. Regarding this aspect, the main camera seems to handle the situation somewhat better, even though, interestingly, there appears to be a slightly paler area in the center. For some odd reason, but at least we don't notice such drastic changes in white balance. In backlit situations, the ultra-wide camera performs well. I expected lower performance, though there's slight chromatic aberration and it's only in full HD as I mentioned, but it handles light and shadow balance decently. When switching to the main camera, the result remains quite similar, although of course this camera is capable of recording in 4K. However, sometimes the main camera might exhibit slightly more pronounced jumps in exposure. Overall, it performs adequately, but it isn't the top performer in its category. At night, using the ultra-wide camera, you will observe a bit more noise. It struggles to balance lights and shadows effectively, and in darker areas you'll notice it doesn't capture enough light. Therefore, using this camera in such environments is not advised. The primary camera has improved a lot, with less noise and good detail. Night recording with this camera meets expectations, though it's not top-notch. Other devices might offer higher quality surprises. The stabilization offered by the ultra-wide camera is quite impressive whether you're walking or running. However, this particular clip demonstrates that occasionally the saturation levels can appear excessively high when using this camera for video recording. Despite this, the stabilization itself is notably effective with this camera. When recording in 4K with the main camera, if you are walking, the movements don't seem too sharp or exaggerated. Yet, if you are running, the movements will become slightly more noticeable and pronounced. However, fortunately, if you have digital stabilization, it can complement well. But for action scenes, what is most recommended is to use the ultra-wide camera. In fact, it even has an ultra-steady mode, which interestingly works in full HD at 60 frames per second. With this mode active, if you are just walking, the scene appears stable enough. But if you start running, it gives a slight jelly effect. Additionally, the color due to the white balance is not very stable, confirming that the camera itself isn't very stable, which is definitely not an expert device for recording videos. When it comes to focus, you will observe that it is among the fastest you have encountered. It reacts very quickly to sudden, aggressive movements, and even in more subtle movements, it adjusts with impressive speed without much confusion in adjusting. In this aspect, it performed excellently. As for the zoom, take note that the device enables us to zoom in smoothly and slowly. It supports a maximum of 10x digital zoom, but the quality certainly does not look very good at that level. The quality, in my opinion, at 5x zoom seems to still be good. However, as I mentioned in the image, the zoom capability of this device is one of its weaker aspects. This device also offers a fast camera mode which luckily displays a bit of stabilization, yet in this case the most basic speed setting is 15 times, which might be excessively fast. For capturing movements of people, the ideal would be 4x zoom, but when it comes to shooting landscapes, it remains appealing, because it can reach up to 1920 times, allowing you to record the growth of plants and other processes that occur much slower in reality. The only issue is that it isn't a video in 4K, but rather in full HD. However, this might be fixed with an update, and we hope they consider doing so. When it comes to slow motion, we have an impressive variety of options available. For instance, we can record at 240 frames per second, although only in HD, which is less appealing since it provides a somewhat lower level of detail. In addition to, in this price range, other devices can record in full HD at 240 frames per second. It also allows for 960 frames per second in HD, almost freezing time. It's appealing even if it's just HD, as it's tied to normal speed at the video's end. We also find full HD at 120 frames per second, offering basic slow motion with good quality. And finally, we have full HD at 480 frames per second. In theory, this would be the most appealing option because it offers a slow image with good resolution. However, note that it includes interpolated frames, which are immediately noticeable in the movements as it tries to predict them, resulting in an unnatural effect. We can conclude that it doesn't stand out much in slow motion either. Additionally, it supports portrait video recording to blur the background, but since the result is in full HD, it won't be as appealing in slow motion. This perception, however, the edge detection appears to be quite effective, especially when you remain still. If you begin to move slightly more, you might encounter some challenges, yet it still manages to deliver a satisfactory outcome. Fortunately, as you distance yourself, this effect diminishes, and as you come closer, it intensifies, providing a natural result in that regard. Interestingly, it also seems to maintain the focus on foreground objects, contributing to a natural outcome. This mode, I believe, is one of the best we'll see in the range, even though I'd love to see it in 4K. The front camera records excellently, with image quality looking superb, offering a great level of detail. Colors might be a bit more saturated, but that depends on personal preference. Overall, I notice very good detail, and it has strong stabilization for recording while walking. In backlit scenarios, it also compensates dark areas quite well. The camera can also compensate well enough for the illuminated areas, although in the illuminated areas there may be slight overexposure, but within the Android world in this price range, I think it is one of the best we will find. It helps a lot to have autofocus. Note that if you like to create content, you can show an object to your audience and if it will focus. Although, it cannot be so close. If it is very close, it will not be able to focus, but definitely something attractive about this cell phone is that it also. The front camera has digital zoom. So if you focus on an object and apply, you're going to see that if you can show pretty good details in this kind of scenarios. That's why I insist that in the price range is one of the best front cameras we will see in the Android world, especially for recording video, because if it can be in 4K, however, the result drops a little quality when you are in indoor scenes because we will see a slightly less detailed image, because it tries to fight a little more with noise and indoors does not have a backlit performance that be extremely prominent, and then if you require a situation with exceptionally good lighting, you will achieve a much better quality result when recording with this device. For instance, at night, if you are close to a light source, the outcome remains quite positive. In fact, it also appears to manage noise quite well. However, as a trade-off, the video seems to have a low shutter speed, which means the movements appear poorly defined, giving the impression of a slow-motion video. The focus will tend to suffer more than usual in these particularly dark scenarios. However, on the plus side, it has a decent light input and good color saturation, which isn't so common in this price range, especially with the front cameras of Android devices. But without a doubt, the best approach is to be in a very well-lit environment when using the front camera. Additionally, we will also find the portrait recording mode, which helps to blur the background, giving a slightly more professional effect. Although it cannot be in 4K if not only full HD, it seems to me that the detection is positive, maintains good stabilization, we do not see cloudy edges or anything. Like that, even in slightly faster movements and notes that even lets you keep focused on the objects in the foreground, giving a completely positive experience, this is undoubtedly another of its strongest points. We will also find fast stabilized camera. Although with the same speed setting that we saw in the rear camera could be too quick for certain scenes, it also features dual recording mode allowing both rear and front cameras to display. In picture-in-picture mode, you can move the small rectangle with the stop on the right. Note that its size can be changed and it has straight corners, but you can zoom in and autofocus is enabled. You also have the option to switch to a circular picture-in-picture view if that's your preferred format. It behaves in exactly the same way as what we have previously observed. Additionally, the final option available to you is the split-screen mode. This allows you to display both cameras at an equal size. However, it's important to note that you cannot rotate the views. Despite this limitation, the autofocus and zoom functionalities remain available for your use. Regarding the software, this device is equipped with Android 15 along with ColorOS 15 layered on top. One positive aspect is that the manufacturer has committed to providing 5 years of Android updates and 6 years of security patches. With this, I believe it is well positioned in a good segment. Although it's not at the top of the market, it is certainly more than adequate to ensure a very good user experience over the years. Let's discuss now the features that this system offers. To begin with, regarding customization, the lock screen is quite intriguing. It's similar to what we observe on the iPhone. It can detect the depth of certain images, allowing the image to appear above the clock in a subtle and elegant manner. Additionally, it enables us to include extra information such as the weather or step count. We can also modify the clock style and change the typography we can select one that we prefer more. Actually, we have the option to change the font thickness and also adjust the color if the automatically detected color isn't to our liking. Additionally, we can enable or disable this depth effect. Moreover, we have the ability to change the style of this image, allowing you to add effects like glass and apply a blur effect. This way, you can customize your lock screen in really nice and unique ways. The truth is, there are a lot of options available. This is one of my favorite aspects of this operating system. Take note that we will find various default themes with different styles that you can take advantage of. Of course, you can also explore all the wallpapers that it already includes, and there are also additional backgrounds available online. Additionally, it features the always on display function, allowing you to show a small cover when your device is locked. Keep in mind that this case will display the date, time, and battery level, along with the fingerprint reader indicator located here. However, you have the option to customize and hide some of these elements if you prefer. In addition to these, it will display the icons for your most recent notifications. Furthermore, it can also display the song information you're currently playing if this option is enabled. Moreover, it allows you to see live alerts, which let you, for instance, view the progress of certain compatible applications. However, at least in Mexico, none of these are really popular. Or you could also have access to timer information and other minor features. By default, if the device hasn't been very active, this screen will be turned off. However, you can choose to keep it on all day or set it for a specific time depending on your preferences. Regarding the fluid style, take note that there are some transitions between the lock screen and the always-on display, providing a very mature and refined system experience. You can additionally select the classic format if you prefer a more traditional appearance. Regardless of your choice, you have the option to switch and select alternative cover art, which includes your own custom character or various other animations available here. Furthermore, it enables you to alter the font style as anticipated. In fact, it features a store where you can install a wide variety of additional fonts. Moreover, you have the ability to customize the icons using different packs, and the icons can be customized either by default or in a specific manner. You have the ability to adjust everything, including an option to match the system's colors. However, please note that not all icons are compatible with this colorization, which can result in an unpleasant appearance. Additionally, there is an option to subtly illuminate the edges of the screen to signal a notification. And on the home screen, we will also discover some intriguing tools that might pique your interest. To begin with, you have the option to decide whether you prefer all your apps to be directly accessible on the home screen or if you would rather have a separate app drawer for better organization. Additionally, it includes a handy gesture feature that enables you to slide down all the icons, making them more accessible with ease. By simply using one hand, you can swipe from the bottom of the screen to the center, and you'll notice that this feature is activated quite effortlessly, allowing for a more seamless experience. The device includes advanced blurring features. This option is turned off by default. But if you prefer a premium look for folders and other elements on your device, You can activate this option to enjoy a significantly enhanced experience. Additionally, the device offers a feature to frequently change the lock screen backgrounds. Fortunately, this option is also turned off by default. While on the main screen, it's important to note that sliding from the top to the bottom will open the shelf. This is a widget center that has been specifically designed for this device. Fortunately, they have included a special widget for Spotify. Additionally, there are several other system widgets available. I want it to be compatible. General widgets are available, but they can only be used on the home screen. Clearly, we have the option to select the one we prefer, and there is a wide variety to choose from. However, I must emphasize that I would also appreciate seeing more widgets offered here on the shelf. If you dislike the shelf, you can select whether you want the global search or swipe notifications when you do that one. Make a gesture and let me remind you about this. In this case, we will have divided the notifications panel and the quick controls panel into two separate sections. Actually, we can switch between these pages in this manner, and we can also access this configuration if you choose a classic setting where both controls and notifications share the same screen. However, this split mode is a new feature that, in my opinion, appears much more visually appealing. Ultimately, it's your choice as a user to decide what you prefer. The device also introduces a feature known as quick access cards, which is rarely used and quite uncommon. In theory, it allows you to scan NFC tags or keys to store them on the cell phone for later use. However, these keys must not be encrypted, which significantly reduces its usefulness. Additionally, we will encounter live alerts that cleverly utilize the camera crop to create animations compatible with certain delivery or shipping applications, as well as with various other functions native to the system. However, for instance, YouTube Music isn't supported, though Spotify is, with extra tools and controls for easy access. This bar also appears when sharing your internet, recording your screen, or using game timers. More developer support would enhance the experience as it's not very sophisticated now. This small capsule can also be used on the clock to display the timer or while making a voice recording to add controls. The device features a split screen mode and a smart sidebar with various options. You can open almost any app you want by dragging and dropping it on the screen. If you want to open two apps simultaneously, just open another app. They will link instantly. You can adjust the space allocation as desired, and when you exit, the apps stay linked. Additionally, you can open apps in a floating window by clicking on them once, but this only allows one app to open. In this floating mode at the same time, that is, if I want to open any other application, you will notice that it replaces and minimizes the one I had open in a small bubble. Then you can have a maximum of up to 3 applications running at the same time. Even YouTube and Instagram are also supported in this mode, which generally some other devices do not have. Obviously, you can also drag these windows to the side to minimize them, change their size, and change their position or restore them to full screen with one tap. This sidebar not only opens apps, but also offers tools like file storage synced with other OPPO devices, making drag and drop simpler. For instance, imagine I choose this image here and explore how I can drag it over to this temporary storage space. Naturally, I could pick multiple images and continue adding them there. Now, notice that if I'm, let's say, using WhatsApp, I can once more access the temporary storage and proceed to drag and drop them into WhatsApp. This way, all 3 photos will be sent. It really seems like a useful tool to enhance the clipboard functionality. Something quite similar occurs with the recent files option. Notice once more that we can drag and drop items, and this way we can attach the things we want. In applications that are compatible, there are also shortcuts available for taking screenshots or recordings. Additionally, note that with screenshots we have the option for a longer capture, which allows us to show more content than what the device typically displays. We also have the ability to translate the content displayed on the screen using Google Lens, or we can translate by voice by opening the device's built-in translator. Additionally, there is a gesture using 3 fingers to capture the screen, or you can hold 3 fingers on the screen if you wish to make a partial capture. It's worth mentioning that it also includes a tool that allows you to easily pixelate specific areas of the content. However, one aspect I dislike about the phone is its one-handed mode. It's not very practical because it merely shifts the top elements downward, yet there are still parts you can't reach, like the buttons located on the opposite side. When you perform this gesture, those buttons become hidden. Additionally, the device features gestures with the screen off, allowing you to draw letters or symbols to launch specific applications, even though these are mostly off by default, but you can set them as you like. It supports air gestures like call control to answer without touching the screen or scroll in apps. For instance, if Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, or YouTube appears, we can open TikTok and activate scrolling via the sidebar. Let's test air scrolling to see if it works, and we observe that it does indeed work. Then, without even touching the screen, we can continue moving. You could be eating wings, washing dishes, and still use it. Watch videos together. This is among my favorite features, and it performs quite well. There are other devices that have this integration, but it often doesn't function as effectively. Additionally, we encounter other gestures, such as answering a call right away when you pick up the phone and bring it to your ear, or similar actions. We will also come across the support sphere, which is a small circle that lets you apply gestures on it, like a tap, double tap, or similar actions. You can also tap it to display the menu with more available options. The device offers facial retouching for video calls, but only in WhatsApp. It includes Send Space mode, letting you disconnect from digital life. Be cautious, as once logged in, you're stuck until time's up. You set the session duration and choose available apps during use. You can customize it with special wallpaper, which helps with studying or work. In the gallery, select images to make a GIF or collage. You can tap an element to save it temporarily for later use. Also, extract text using Google Lens by tapping on the text you want. Within the gallery settings, you will locate an option for artificial intelligence suggestions to help you edit your photos. Additionally, it includes a compass feature which is not available on all devices, and it features an application named Music Party. This app allows you to connect multiple devices of the same brand to play the same song simultaneously. However, it requires local files like MP3 and does not support streaming. Now let's talk a bit about the artificial intelligence features built into this device. In the description, you will find a video where I describe each of them in more detail. Let me just mention which ones are included here, and if you want to know more details, you can watch my video with the link in the description, which allows you to generate photos based on your own photos. In the voice recorder, you'll find a function to transcribe and summarize recordings. Within the Notes app, there are AI tools to reformat, refine, expand, shorten, and restyle your text. It also includes a translation tool and a document app for translating entire PDF documents. You could also summarize them, which can be incredibly useful for studying purposes. Or it even allows you to convert various Word, Excel, or PowerPoint documents into PDF format. In fact, with this app, you don't even need to install Office or anything similar, since it conveniently opens everything natively within WhatsApp, for instance. It's important to note that it will also provide us an option so that when we receive a message, we can suggest a response through the sidebar. Using artificial intelligence, it takes just a few seconds to generate content, and here are the options available. Then, with a single tap, we can respond, and that's all there is to it. If you're browsing any web page, take note that in the sidebar, there's also a summary available. This way, in just a few points, you can quickly understand what you are reading in the article, or you can even have it read aloud for greater convenience. Additionally, the artificial intelligence image editor provides options like enhancing clarity using an eraser and more. You can additionally utilize the object selection, focus, or remove flashes. I demonstrate each of these options in a separate video I created just for you. And finally, please note that it also features circle to search. This means you can hold down on the bottom, then type in what you want to find, and observe how Google assists you by providing excellent results. Circle to search also enables you to swiftly extract text, even in parts of the system where text selection is typically unavailable. Plus, it would also I would enable you to translate the content you're viewing with just a single tap into your preferred language. Additionally, it features Gemini, the Google Assistant, which you can access by holding down the button. Although this is a feature available on all Android devices, not everyone might be aware of it. Here, you can engage in a chat as if you were talking to a friend, and you have the option to do this through a text chat, or you can initiate a conversation as if it were a phone call. Hello Gemini, you're going to be featured in a video review of the OPPO Reno 13G that I'm currently recording for my audience. Could you share with me what your favorite feature of this phone is? What an absolute thrill it is. The G Reindeer offers so much, but if I had to pick one feature, it would definitely be its camera. The quality of the photos is truly amazing, particularly in low light conditions. What are your thoughts on it? I wasn't fond of the photos. What I liked most was the water resistance. Indeed, the water resistance feature is incredibly useful, particularly for those who enjoy capturing photos underwater. What else did you find appealing about the OPPO Reno 13 5 grams? We'll chat and say goodbye to the audience. Of course, it has truly been a pleasure to chat with you about the 13G Reindeer. I sincerely hope that you enjoyed watching the video. Looking forward to seeing you next time. Insecurity is an optical fingerprint reader in the screen. It's not that if I hold your finger longer, it emits light that might annoy some at night. It supports 5 records and lets you change the recognition animation for full customization. Additionally, it includes a quick launch feature which can be highly useful for creating shortcuts tailored entirely to your preferences. This feature not only lets you add shortcuts to applications but also to specific actions within those applications. For instance, one possibility might be to go directly to the portrait mode of the camera. Another option could be to access a specific Telegram chat directly, or even go straight to the TikTok camera. Obviously, you can also add the shortcuts to the applications you want and simply at the time of unlocking remain your fingerprint on top so that this list is displayed, and you simply must release on the action you want. Note, in this case enter directly to the TikTok camera so it can serve you to save time. Note that it also includes facial recognition, although you know that it is not so safe because it is only in 2 dimensions. The device itself gives you the following information. Some warnings for convenience, you can use it. In the notifications section, there's an option to hide notifications when it detects you're not looking at your phone. Just generate another facial registration. It also includes a payment protection option to prevent commands through the USB port when using sensitive apps. And within the file manager, we are also going to discover the private safe. This feature lets you securely safeguard items with your fingerprint, keeping them hidden from view. In the Security Center application itself, you will find even more tools. For example, it allows you to block applications, requiring a second verification before granting access to the apps you choose. You could also choose to hide applications from the main screen and later display them only by entering a code on the telephone keypad or by using a special icon. Furthermore, you have the option to clone applications, allowing you to use 2 separate accounts on the same cell phone. Additionally, there is the System Cloner option, which practically allows you to have 2 cell phones in one device. It's important to note that you just need to use a different unlocking pattern than your main one, and in this manner, you can access practically as if you had another cell phone with its own accounts and applications. In fact, it also allows you to add users in case you want to lend your cell phone perhaps to several people, or if you're lending your cell phone for a child, there's a special kids mode option available where you can select which apps they are permitted to use. Additionally, it provides reminders for maintaining good posture and encourages using the device in optimal lighting conditions. Moreover, it will send an alert if the child is holding the cell phone too close. Therefore, it is a highly useful feature to ensure complete safety when lending your cell phone to a little one. When you decide to share a photo, you'll notice that there's a button at the top. This button allows you to remove the location or even other properties. Additionally, it has a repair mode that locks the content. However, what I find unappealing is that the security and privacy page isn't customized by Color OS. Instead, it resembles pure Android, which gives the impression of an operating system that might not be as well designed. Perhaps Google has compelled them to do this. Notice how it seems like we're using pure Android here. But when entering another section, it switches back to Color OS, creating an odd feeling. The device also offers malware scanning in partnership with Avast for a secure experience, alongside Google Play Protect. Since we mentioned Google, like all Android devices, it includes features such as extended unlock and more to explore. In another video, which I have linked in the description below, this way you can learn all about the various capabilities and features of this cell phone. This cell phone has a battery capacity of 5,600 mAh, theoretically larger than the average cell phone, which is impressive given its slim profile. But let's check the test results to see if this larger battery means longer life. When discharged quickly, the phone lasted 5 hours and 22 minutes, giving us about an hour more than average cell phones. However, I conducted another test where I left the battery drainer running in the background while watching videos in the foreground. Typically, in this kind of test, the duration is extended. But in this particular case, it was actually reduced to 4 hours. What does this indicate? It means you need to be very cautious about the apps or processes you leave running in the background. If there's something consuming a significant amount of energy, the cell phone won't be smart enough to compensate and give you a longer battery life. It remains a priority even when it's running in the background. So, please make sure to pay attention and keep unused apps closed so the device lasts as long as possible. In the final test, when we played only a YouTube video with the screen brightness set to medium, from 100% to 0% until it turned off, it lasted for 18 hours and 29 minutes. Interestingly, it didn't perform as well as some other devices which are known for their battery efficiency, reaching 23 hours or more. So possibly, the screen and processor aren't as efficient for simpler tasks, consuming more power than desired. However, when pushed to the max, it performs well, which could balance things out. Battery life varies daily depending on usage. It seems to offer good duration but isn't its standout feature. Anyway, there's a power saving mode for when your phone's battery seems low during the day. Or in emergencies, there's an ultra saving mode that restricts more features to extend battery life significantly, but it limits several functions. As for charging, the good news is the charger is included in the box and it's 80 watts, even though this might sound very impressive, but in practical life it doesn't get to take advantage of the 80 watts. In my first test with 15 min it reached 35% of power, in half an hour it reached up to 63 enante, which is not bad at all. It is very good in that aspect, and the full charge finishes it in 56 min. I insist it is not bad at all, but this is mainly because it maintains a power higher than 20 watts most of the time. However, notice that it does not even get to exceed 50 watts. This is with the default setting. Although, the device brings in its settings an option of intelligent fast charging, which improves a little, although it is not a dramatic improvement. In the second test with the intelligent fast charging activated in 15 min, it charged up to 38 and only 3% difference in 30 minutes. Reached 67, and just as there was not so much difference and the full charge finished it in 49 min, that is only 7 min difference. And as you can see in the graph, in fact, it seems that the device supports 45 or 50 W load. Even though the charger is 80 watts, it doesn't really support such a powerful charge. So in charging power, it's not too bad. Although 80 watts sounds like it would charge a lot faster than it actually did. Consider also that it does not have wireless charging. That is a weak point in the price range, and also does not have reverse wireless charging to take care of the battery and its deterioration. In this case, it does have smart charging and charging lock, so that even if you leave it plugged in all night, or if there are times when you must keep it plugged in at all times, the battery does not get to damage. In connectivity is very well covered, has 5G and Wi-Fi 6 offering good download speeds, always also with this specific data lock mode for each application to avoid unwanted consumption. On those occasions when you did not realize that you had the Wi-Fi off, so you can choose, for example, that YouTube never use your mobile data or something like that. We will also discover Bluetooth version 5.4 along with NFC, providing excellent tools for mobile payments and ensuring stable connections. As anticipated, it lacks FM radio, however. It includes OTG capability, enabling the connection of accessories via the USB-C port. Additionally, it features something called Beacon Link, which is compatible exclusively with OPPO, Realme or OnePlus devices. This feature permits making calls even without a mobile signal, although people need to be close by because it will utilize Bluetooth, which can be particularly useful when you don't want to shout in areas lacking signal. Additionally, it includes a fascinating feature for sharing photos or files with an iPhone. To do this, you must first install an app on the iPhone called Connect and grant it the necessary permissions, including location access. Once that's set up, you can pick the photo you wish to share, tap on share, and then send it to the iPhone without needing to search through a list or anything like that. So just zoom in, and you also don't need to have this app open on the iPhone. So you could be in any other activity and it's going to detect the sending. You just have to authorize it, and that's it. It's an interesting feature that you even keep the features of your captured live photos. In OPPO, you can also use it on the iPhone as well. I believe OPPO has succeeded. A good level of interaction between your cell phones and Apple phones ensures it's not such a closed ecosystem, which is beneficial. This app lets you send pictures from an iPhone to an OPPO phone and vice versa. On the iPhone, press share, then select or connect and ensure the share with iPhone option is enabled. In the quick controls, just as if you had AirDrop activated. This way photos are also sent. In fact, you could even bring them closer for detection or select them from the list. It's a commendable effort by OPPO to slightly open up Apple's closed ecosystem. When it comes to screen projection, if it supports wireless projection, it would enable you to hide notifications, ensuring a good level of privacy on the projected screen. Additionally, it allows you to... The OPPO device can project with the cell phone screen turned off so as not to consume so much energy, in addition to projecting only a single application, so you can be doing other things on your cell phone while the projection is being made. Although it does not support cable projection with HDMI adapters, it does have Android Auto as expected. And in the sensors, there is good news. It has accelerometer, geomagnetic field sensor, orientation, one gyroscope, physical proximity sensor, not virtual. So it gives us an experience that is not virtual. Just as you'd expect, it's positive, and to top it all off, it also includes infrared to function as a universal remote control. This means you can add TVs, air conditioners, cameras, and other similar devices, allowing you to control them directly from your cell phone. Now let's discuss the ecosystem of this device. When it comes to the number of OPPO devices currently available, at least in Mexico, the catalog is quite limited and the OPPO's watch needs more development or a broader catalog for more choices. Luckily, OPPO isn't a closed ecosystem. Being Android, you can connect watches from other brands and have a good experience. It may need some setup, which might not be user-friendly for everyone, so the experience is a bit lacking there. Their own headphones. Remember, OnePlus is an OPPO brand, and OnePlus headphones offer exceptional audio quality. There's also the OPPO Band or OPPO Pad. Currently, OPPO has replaced OPPO Share with Google's Quick Share, making OPPO Share an option for sending with iPhone, while Quick Share is for sending files between devices of this brand. Please note that OPPO lacks a laptop to enhance the ecosystem experience, though Quick Share can be installed on Windows PCs, and OPPO has tried to integrate with Mac, but that's currently limited. On the OPPO Find N, interestingly, this option is missing, so computer interaction isn't as advanced or needs more setup, unlike an iPhone or Huawei device that offers you. It's super easy to interact with their own devices. In my opinion, OPPO still has some room for improvement in that area. Luckily, they offer Multi-Screen Connect, the technology by OPPO. However, it requires installing a client on Windows laptops, so there is a necessary installation and configuration process, but it isn't overly complicated. With this feature, you can have a shared clipboard, project your phone screen directly onto the laptop, drag and drop files, and access more tools. It's useful, but with Mac, the flat experience is currently locked. It also introduces touch interactions meant to quickly configure by touching a computer or tablet. However, the device catalog is the issue. The technologies exist perhaps in some countries or regions. If they possess a larger catalog, it could lead to a more developed and advanced ecosystem, at least in Mexico and elsewhere. These countries are not in that region. Various options, so you also rely on Google technologies. Apple lacks its own cloud too. You will need to depend on Google Photos or Google Drive for storage. OPPO lacks its own app for managing home devices and instead relies on Google Home. However, it does have an app store named App Market, which serves solely as an alternative. Therefore, it is evident that OPPO's ecosystem is a key area that requires improvement to provide its users with a superior experience. Let's go now to the performance test with our traditional app opening test. This device integrates the MediaTek Dimensity 8350 processor built on a 4nm process. It is a relatively new and unique processor for this device. It is also accompanied by 12GB of RAM and 512GB of storage. It took 233S on average to open each application, showing very good performance. I believe it performs quite well for its price range. It's important to note that these 12GB of RAM appear to be managed efficiently, as we aren't experiencing any reboots while navigating through the applications we have open. Additionally, it provides us with extra virtual RAM, which I personally find unnecessary. This is because you can switch between applications in an incredibly fluid manner without having to wait for the device to reload some of this content. In fact, it also offers intriguing tools such as the ability to lock apps, which prevents them from closing when running in the background, or the option to temporarily hide content. It's important to note that even with all those apps open, the device still maintains a notably good performance. This is especially true while you are browsing apps that require loading multimedia content from the cloud. Therefore, we do not observe the device sacrificing performance or anything similar, but it consistently provides a quite smooth experience. By default, it activates with an additional 12GB of virtual RAM, which I think is not needed. Personally, I would suggest turning it off, but here it offers you various usage statistics to help you make a decision. And without a doubt, storage is its strongest feature, boasting 512GB, which is quite rare in this price range. So, we have an abundance of space, and it's worth mentioning that we will also have multiple tools available to assist us. The system can actually be cleaned by debugging various things such as WhatsApp, Instagram, and Facebook. It even allows you to compress some app content, merge files, and much more. In other words, you have plenty of tools available to prevent your device from becoming easily filled up. Moreover, there is a tremendous amount of storage space, making it quite challenging to fill up completely. However, keep in mind that there is no slot available for microSD cards. Typically, manufacturers who choose not to include a slot for microSD cards do so for have a decent speed for reading and writing in the internal storage. However, in this particular case, it should be noted that the reading speed isn't always spectacular. There are moments when it rises significantly, but for the most part, it tends to stay a bit lower than we would have preferred. The writing speed is somewhat similar to that of many other devices available in the market, even those that are more affordable. Hence, it doesn't seem to particularly stand out when it comes to storage speed. However, let's observe its performance in a real-life test by exporting this video in 4K. Keep in mind, we are using clips recorded with this cell phone, totaling 1 minute. And there you have it, it took 26 seconds. Not bad at all. Obviously, it isn't a full flagship, but the processor offers performance similar to flagship models from previous years, so you can see it complies quite well. Regarding games, we will discover a specific application where you can see it will display the additional tools that the manufacturer has included some features. To begin with, there is a section of quick games that you can play without needing an internet connection. Additionally, you can manage all the content you have installed. This means you can quickly view the descriptions or access the gameplays you've recorded in the settings. Furthermore, you can enable or disable the additional toolboxes, which I will demonstrate shortly, and customize how you want them to function. Games, so that they only consume internet over Wi-Fi and not your mobile data. You can also make calls immediately answered on speakerphone to avoid interrupting your game, and the style of notifications that appear we will see in a moment. You can block the automatic brightness and activate a special vibration D, but it is not compatible with the games I have installed. You also have the option to save some games in cache, allowing them to run more quickly the next time you open them. Additionally, there's another setting to adjust the screen resolution, helping to prevent extra heating of the phone, although this is turned off by default. Moreover, it provides a brief overview of the championship mode, detailing everything it will disable or block to ensure you have no interruptions while you're playing. And finally, you have access to the HDR graphics section exclusive to PUBG. When you open a game, you'll notice an optimization section provided by the manufacturer. It also includes shortcuts to apps, allowing you to quickly reply to a message or similar tasks without needing to exit, leaving your game. We can find the frames per second counter and quickly access the performance profile we want for the device, whether to save battery or maximize power. Here we also have the Spotify player and brightness control, and with one touch, you can activate championship mode. Notifications come in various styles, and by default they appear in this floating globe style. That it might seem like you can't do much with it as it just gets in the way. However, keep in mind that it can switch to a vignette style by adjusting the speed and opacity settings. Also take note that in this mode, notifications won't interrupt you because they will only appear as strips of text scrolling across the screen. In fact, if you prefer, you could even block notifications completely, just like you can with calls. We additionally discovered the performance enhancement feature that is compatible with only certain games, which might somehow increase frames per second along with other optimizations. Moreover, we found options to capture screenshots or record the screen, optimize the network to enhance latency, optimize the touch response of the screen, lock the screen orientation, and cache the game. Certain games will show the tool to adjust screen filters and change your voice if you want a higher or lower pitch. There's also the automatic resolution I mentioned earlier, plus a button to monitor frames per second, GPU and CPU consumption. It also dims the screen while downloading the game and extra content for it. Also has an option to avoid excessive battery consumption. And finally, we will find the volume settings. It is definitely a very complete suite of additional tools that you can enjoy when playing Call of Duty. By default, it brings us the very high graphics quality at a very high rate, which speaks very well of this processor. We can also raise the rate to a maximum level while maintaining the graphic quality, or go up to an ultra level, but the graphic quality is adjusted to the maximum level. Lowest level, if you prioritize quality. Regarding graphics, keep in mind that if it's capable, you can activate almost all the effects and experimental features you desire. With this setup, note that the outcome was truly excellent. Remember, this processor was developed in collaboration with OPPO, making this cell phone the only one currently equipped with this chip. It appears to have an outstanding level of optimization. What OPPO has managed to achieve is quite impressive, because even though we aren't discussing a high-end chip yet, it is delivering an excellent performance. The low peaks are hardly noticeable since it only dropped to 52 frames per second, ensuring smooth fluidity. The temperature is managed quite well, although when recording the screen you might observe some slightly more noticeable low peaks, but it's not really anything serious. It's important to emphasize that we activated the high performance mode for each test, prioritizing the rate of frames per second. In this particular case, it provided us with an average of 90 frames per second, maintaining excellent stability. Additionally, we observed very good fluidity and a controlled temperature reaching 41.8 degrees Celsius on the outer lid by the end of the test. I want to remind you that this device includes a vapor chamber measuring 4,619 mm², which helps to keep the cell phone cool even though it is thin. Then we played Legends, switching the automatic setting to high at 60 frames per second. As usual, there's one in this game. That another low peak at the time of loading some special animation, but that happens in all cell phones. In general, we can say that the device, if you get to behave well, giving us a good fluidity of game with something according to the range. Although in this price range, there are. Device is 100% focused on gaming, that obviously will behave better, but if you are looking for something more balanced in other sections, this cell phone will not disappoint you at all. Regarding games, we played SpongeBob, and you're seeing the default quality here, but we switched it to high quality and resolution at 60 frames per second. Although the graph shows a bit more fluctuation than gamers prefer with a 100% perfect stability, it's worth mentioning that even though the frames fluctuate, the lowest it dropped to in our test was 49 frames per second. So it still maintains a fluid experience. In practical life, you won't notice fluctuations unless you're ultra sensitive. Overall, it maintains a great gaming experience. When recording the screen, there might be some stumbles, but it generally performs excellently. OPPO seems to have optimized this processor with MediaTek very well. Finally, we played Genshin Impact. The default quality is medium, but we increased it to high quality at 60 frames per second in this case. The more demanding users might find themselves somewhat disappointed, as it was not consistently able to maintain 60 frames per second. Although it did achieve this frame rate at certain points, it generally limited itself to around 40 frames per second. However, in exchange, it offers a notable stability. This appears to be due to the AI Hyperboost feature, which seemingly works to stabilize the frames per second and manage the temperature more effectively. At least in this particular game and during testing, this was evident. If it appears to positively impact the cell phone, I insist, even though it doesn't hit very high frames per second, it maintains a stable experience at 40 frames per second, especially with excellent temperature control. I wish the user could choose, since maybe there are users who they don't mind if the phone heats up as long as it delivers higher performance. In this case, it automatically limited the frames per second, which helped stabilize the temperature and provided greater stability with fewer frame fluctuations. Overall, I found the gaming experience positive. In conclusion, in the Android world, it is likely that this device falls short, especially at the camera level, because it does not offer a telephoto camera. But if you compare it with its main competitor, which in price is exactly the same, which is the iPhone 16, it offers a slightly more complete experience in this aspect. If we do not compare them, we will simply find a good design, stylish and slim with a good level of resistance against water as well. In fact, it has the photo mode. Underwater to take advantage of the buttons. The screen is also very good, XDR compatible, has integrated fingerprint reader. The sound unfortunately is not so good because the complementary speaker falls very short. The front camera is pretty good at the time of recording videos, although in backlight maybe falls short. Especially if you compare it with the iPhone 16, which is spectacular, but if you compare it in the Android world, the front camera is really very good because it has focus. The main camera, unfortunately, I did not find it to be very nice at all, as it falls short in several cases, so it's not that great. As for the rear cameras, they seem to provide a somewhat fair performance, and the color of them is. The primary camera hasn't appeared very impressive to me. In some aspects, it seems to fall short of expectations. On certain occasions, for those who are the most demanding in photography, it really falls quite short. When it comes to video recording, it also doesn't meet expectations with its rear system. As for the battery, something curious happens. In some tests it performed very well, while in others, it didn't. Testing didn't go well. Let's just say that it will fulfill nothing more. The loading speed in 30 min is quite good, and the software, as we have already said, is quite stable, even in this case incorporating functions for disrupting the ecosystem. Apple allows you to send and receive photos from an iPhone while keeping features like live photo or the XDR properties intact. Therefore, I believe it is a remarkable device. That won't cause too much disappointment unless you're among the more demanding users who pay close attention to various other specifications. However, for the average user, it is indeed a good device, particularly because it offers great performance in applications and games run well. Notably, the MediaTek processor teeth features has been developed in. Partnering with OPPO, this has enabled a great integration, but I always say, it depends on you. User and your needs, so I covered everything in this review. We have reached the end for now. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you liked it, you know what to do. You can point it out, and then we will see you the next time.